The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Monday is the worst day of the week if you're a college wrestling fan. I believe each year there are less than 10 total dual meets across all divisions on Mondays. In a sense, Wrestling Mondays give you a case of the Mondays, and I do believe you'd get your ass kicked for saying something like that. Pack up your red staplers and burn down the building. This is Short Time Shots. Look at the day's wrestling scores and more from around the world of wrestling. And in this case, no scores. I'm Jason Bryant. While I'm getting you reacquainted with the show, or if I'm introducing you to it, I'll typically do these on days where there's at least 10 dual meets around the country. One of the podcast newsletters I subscribe to, James Cridland's Pod News, does a weekday show, and they're about 2 minutes long. They basically say, here's what's in the newsletter. So that's kind of like what I'm doing here. I did do the shots long before that show launched. But in days where there isn't scores, I might as well tell you what's in the newsletter so I can entice you to sign up for it. It's free. Of course, I'll also pitch a plug for this network, and since I'd rather strip out pre-roll ads if I can get enough support for the program. That's a hint. And no, the regular short time hasn't gone away, but this is the format the show started with, and my enterprise features will be sprinkled in a few times a month. That feed still exists, a shots-only feed exists, and if you're glutton for punishment, the main Mad Talk feed exists, and that literally feeds you with an excess of probably 30-plus episodes a month. So here's the items you'll be reading about. From the Daily Wrestling News, Shannon Scoville from NCAA.com breaks down what we learned from the U23 World Championships and how it will impact this year's college wrestling season. Shannon's been writing some solid stuff at NCAA.com for the last 2 years. She was a swimmer at American University during her college years and is worth reading. In recruiting news from IA Wrestle, Colorado State champion Cam Lucero is committed to Iowa. The junior from Pagosa Springs was a state champion last year at 145 pounds. West Virginia will have an unofficial girls state wrestling tournament in February at Parkersburg High School to gauge interest in girls wrestling. The full story is via Jessica Wilt at The Journal. Speaking of Parkersburg, congrats to Kyle Bratke and his wife Olivia on the arrival of their firstborn Hayden. I'll send you guys a diaper genie. It's well worth it. MontanaSports.com profiles several of the state's native wrestling sons on the roster at North Dakota State University. The Center Daily Times in State College, Pennsylvania, and writer Lauren Muffler tells wrestling fans what they should expect from Penn State's 2019-2020 college wrestling season. Baldwin Wallace's Stanley Bleach was the Ohio Athletic Conference Wrestler of the Week after he won the Ithaca Invitational and was named the tournament's OW in the process. Paul Santamarco of Lycoming had 3 falls at the Lycoming Invitational and was named Middle Atlantic Conference Co-Wrestler of the Week. Not trying to make fun of the young man, but I couldn't help but think about 3 amigos in the small village of Santa Poco while I was saying Santa Marco. And just don't shooting. You know what? One take, screw that. Don't shoot the invisible swordsman. Joining Santa Marco with MAC honors was Chase Smith of the first-year program at Alvernia. He, too, was 3-0 with 3 falls at the Lycoming Invitational, this time at 174 pounds. Wisconsin native Trey Leon from the University of the Cumberlands was the Mid-South Conference Wrestler of the Week. The All-American was 5-0 and pinned Bluefield's Creed Lump in the finals at 157 pounds of the Patriot Open. Nolan Saxton of Reinhardt was the Appalachian Athletic Conference Wrestler of the Week after he defeated Division II's 4th-ranked Kevin Allman of Emmanuel last week. In what used to be the Iowa Conference, Nebraska Wesleyan's Eron Hayes was the American Rivers Conference Wrestler of the Week after winning the Yellow Jacket Open down in Rochester, Minnesota. He was the school's first All-American when he placed last year in Roanoke in Division III. They're coached by Brandon Bradley, a past Virginia State runner-up from Henrico. Yes, Virginia references, they are everywhere. Finally, wrestling fan Ted Carreras writes a blog called Hand Raised. He does a weekly column with his thoughts on wrestling. They're reminiscent of things I've written for Intermat, Wrestling 411, The Mat, and basically any other wrestling job I've had in the last 20 years. Ted, good stuff. I enjoyed reading it, so I'm including it in today's newsletter and the shots. On the network, episode 9 of my groundbreaking, earth-shattering, monumental, award-nominated Rocked Up podcast, chronicling the foundation and formation of the new wrestling program at Arkansas Little Rock, is dropped. This episode talks with head coach Neil Erisman of Little Rock and University of the Ozarks head coach Leroy Gardner about scheduling in year 1 and how the two schools came together to schedule Little Rock's first home duel on November 24th. All those things I said at the beginning are true. Probably the reason I'm spitting out less formulated interview shows and taking a more creative look into the storytelling aspect of wrestling. I'm being serious here. In the Game of Throws Fantasy Football League, here are the safe-for-work team scores that we can report. The Loreth Bay Buccaneers, which is me, beat Never Go Full Eli 82-79. Kushti Kings beat Straight Cash Homie 76-66. Team Payne beat A Girly Has No Name. You're picking up on a theme here. 131-91. And Teat Brand Giants Milk beat Game of Jones 108-72. The other two games were not reported due to team names befitting of fantasy football, but not quite a wrestling podcast. All scores are unofficial until Tuesday, which Commissioner Richard Immel knows all too well. You can get to read those stories and more from Matt Talk Online's daily wrestling newsletter. Sign up for free at matttalkonline.com/news and get the day's top stories from around the world in wrestling delivered to your inbox for free. The Matt Talk Online daily newsletter is sponsored by Resolite. Short Time Shots is sponsorless. You want to contribute? You got a product or something you want to pitch or some added exposure for? Give me a shout. Or if you'd like to simply support the show and all the on-demand audio offerings, free newsletters, historical research, and you want to get some of that cool compound gear, 3 weeks, y'all, 3 weeks. I'll get some new compound stuff. You can support this program by making a small monthly contribution to the network by going to matttalkonline.com/join the team. Oh boy, man. A lot of words, one take. I actually am lying to you. I did stop and hit record a couple different times after I butchered Lauren Muffler's name. I was like, I'm not going to leave that in. That's not cool. Anyway, Short Time is proudly outfitted by Compound Sportswear. That's all I got for you today. And here's one thing that nobody noticed. I haven't done my weather tweets since September 10th. You people disappoint me. And you people said you were fans of the show. Anyway, I was in Nur Sultan, Kazakhstan, and then my weather app didn't quite do the auto update of Nur Sultan. Maybe you thought it was still Astana. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me because my wife's in China, and who knows how I'm going to survive this week with my kids. I love being a parent, but man, it's hard. Shout out to all the parents out there. It's November, and it's snowing in Minnesota. So again, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me because you've always got time for Short Time. What am I going to do with 40 subscriptions to Vibe?